and welcome to Arts and Entertainment.
With Chris and Randall.
I'm Chris,
I'm Randall.
and welcome to the show. Today we're going to cover one of the most popular uh, show on Netflix, the Squid Game, at least the most popular show at the time of recording, which is October, whatever it is, 19th. Is it the 19th, Randall?
It's the 20th today.
Oh, my bad. So the most popular show on Netflix streaming right now as of October 20th, 2021 is the Squid Game, which is great because if it wasn't the Squid Game, it would be horrible transphobic comedy. So if nothing else, which I'm really grateful that it's Squid Game instead. But we're going to talk about Squid Game. Randall has a very interesting analysis of it, and I think it might even explain why it's so popular, which will be pretty fascinating. But before we start the show, as always, if you're new to the show, please subscribe. And always, we like it if you can like the show. Uh, if you want to share this with your friends who just watched Squid Game, I would recommend it because, we're going to say some pretty cool stuff. And as always, we want your comments. We want your comments. Up front, should have said it. The first part of this episode is going to be spoiler free. So when we start, we're not going to give away too many spoilers beyond the general premise, if you can deal with the general premise. And then after that, we'll let you know when minor spoilers that if you're watching it, like, oh, on episode 3, great, we'll go, well, this happens in episode 1, 2, and 3. And then finally, for those of you who saw the whole damn thing, we'll just warn everyone else, time to get off the bus. We're going to go deep. So, Squid Game. It is, it's so big, it has its own sketch on Saturday Night Live. Did you see that, Randall?
I didn't watch it.
You should watch it. If we can post a link to it, I'll send you it, and you can see the Squid Game music video on Saturday Night Live. It was very funny. So, the how would you say is the basic setup of Squid Game, Randall? What's the
Well, it's like a lot of other shows where people are forced to compete in a life or death game.
So it's kind of like if you did like Big Brother or Survivor, but as you said, you did it with life and death stakes.
Right, but I think that most of the other shows, most of the other stories, they seem to lack a proper ideological center, or they're not. I think Squid Game is about class. It's essentially Marxist in its ideology, which is a argument I'm going to make. I'll go into detail on that later, but
Okay, good.
most of these other shows,
Okay.
they're not. They don't have much of an ideological center. I mean, some of them do more than others. Like you take something like Battle Royale or 3%, shows like that. I think it's more of an analogy of of the education system, rather than something about class. But yeah, Squid
Well,
Game is
it's
definitely
that.
about class and capitalism, and yeah.
So Squid Game, as you just said, Randall, is about 456 people in a mysterious place who are willing participants who compete in 6 life or death games based on popular Korean children's game. The show takes place in South Korea, and you can watch it either dubbed or with subtitles. I recommend watching it with subtitles. That way, you get a sense of what Korean sounds like. For the prize money of 46 billion won, which I actually found out is $36 million. And the idea behind it is that this is the most minor spoiler, folks, but because we just said life or death, when a player dies, the pot increases so that they can win more money. So, you're looking at like Survivor or any of the reality shows that were so popular where people work in teams and groups to try to figure out strategies as collectives and then as individuals to get the goal, right? To get the goal, to win the game. And as Randall said, it's a Marxist analogy. Now, Randall, you mentioned something really cool, which is you mentioned Battle Royale. Can you just tell us a little more about Battle Royale? I know it's based on a manga.
Okay, the idea behind Battle Royale is there's this future civilization where resources are scarce. So when kids get to the final grade of school, you take that whole grade and you set them on an island. And this is I'm going to spoil it for everybody if you haven't seen it, but you take all those kids, you set them on an island in that final class, and you have them fight to the death until there's just one left, and that one person can enter society. Everybody else has got to die. So it's
So
like
it's
a form
kind
of
of like
population
Hunger
control. Yes, yes. Well, Hunger Games is a
And
little bit different. I mean, but yeah, it's all of these shows are kind of about like a well, they're analogous to education. They're analogous to a world of scarce resources. But they
all
don't
right, so
really
that
they don't ideologically. I don't think they touch on like class or the effects of capitalism on people's behavior,
well,
which is
Battle
what Squid
Royale was
Game does.
right. So Battle Royale, the reason why I'm picking on that is it's kind of integral to the origin of Squid Game. So, man, and I'm going to butcher the writer, director, the creator of Squid Game's name. My apologies. I try to figure out how to say it. It's either Wang Dong-hyuk or it's Hwang Dong-hyuk. But the writer, director, who's around your age, Randall, which will later on turn out, I think, to be important. Back in 2009, he's a filmmaker and he's having a hard time uh, getting any of his films financed. And he found himself broke and he had a lot of free time, so he would hang out in coffee shops reading Japanese survival manga, including Battle Royale, Liar Game, Gambling Apocalypse. And he felt that the character situations in these works were he could relate to them and to that they paralleled his own current situation, and that gave him the idea of being able to join such a survival game to win money to help him get out of debt, leading him to write a film script on that same concept. The man's in debt in real life. He's reading manga survival, and he says to himself, like, this might make a great movie. So he said, I wanted to write a story that was an allegory or a fable about modern capitalist society, something that depicts an extreme competition, somewhat like the extreme competition of life, but what I wanted it to use the kind of characters we've all met in real life. However, he feared the storyline was too difficult to understand and bizarre at the time. He did try to sell his story to various Korean production groups and actors, but he had been told it was too grotesque and unrealistic. So he put the script aside without any takers, and about 10 years later, Netflix decided to produce it. And he said, it's a sad story, but the reason why I returned to the project is because the world 10 years from then has transformed to a place where these unbelievable survivor stories are so fitting. I thought that this is the time when people will call these stories intriguing and realistic. He further believed that COVID-19 pandemic in 2019, 2020, and 21 impacted the economic disparity between classes in South Korea and said all of these points made the story very realistic for people compared to a decade ago. In fact, two of the main characters, which we'll talk about in a minute, are just variations of his own personal experience. Actually, three of the characters, Randall, was the protagonist's best friend, and the investigator, who Wang himself had been a former police officer. So the protagonist of, shall I tell everyone just the main cast, the dramatis persona, as they would say in a play, and then
I don't think we need. I don't think we need to do that.
I'm going to, so
Okay.
that people know what we're referring to. I sorry I didn't give you a good setup there. So our protagonist is often referred to as Jin Hun, but we're going to call him by all the players have designated numbers in the game, and there are 456 players at the start. So Jin Hun is player 456. There is an old man who acts as a mentor to Jin Hun. His number is 001. Then there is his best friend, who went to college and became a finance guy, Sang-woo, and his player number is 218. Then there is a North Korean female defector who's a pickpocket. Her name is, I can't pronounce it, Sae-byok, but we'll call her by her number 067. There's an immigrant named Ali from Pakistan, 199. There is the seductress. I will certainly not try to say her name, 212. A gangster. His number is 101. And we'll keep on bringing this up. There's also a salesman who introduces people, gives them the card. The inspector, who is the man who's investigating it, whose name is Jin Hoon. And in fact, our director, who we just mentioned, the writer, he had been a police inspector. The front man who runs the game, and the mysterious host. All right, plus other characters who we'll talk about later. So with that out of the way, Randall, give me your analysis.
Well, I think one of the reasons Squid Game is so popular is because it really nails a critique of capitalism in a way that Karl Marx would really appreciate. It's essentially Marxist, and it's funny because I think that in South Korea, any kind of you cannot say anything positive about North Korea by law, I think. So Squid Game really goes right up. Yeah, so I think I was reading that somewhere. So Squid Game goes right up to the line. I mean, after this podcast comes out, the writer-director might be arrested. I don't know, but so one of the things that Marx, Marx was right about a lot of things, and one of the things that he really, one of his most novel ideas was how capitalism influences day-to-day relations between people, how it changes the way people behave interpersonally. So most works don't seem to really touch on that. So we talked about A Christmas Carol like last Christmas, and I think A Christmas Carol is very Marxist in a lot of ways. So Squid Game, let's say, and the interesting thing about Squid Game is its lefty Marxist roots, shall we say, are fairly obvious, because you find out, and we're going to go into spoilers now, right, Chris?
Well, that was fast. Did you? How much spoilers are you going to go into?
Well, I was about to give one out.
Okay, but like, okay. Well, folks, we try to be a spoiler-free show. We're not. So, okay, keep on going. Go on.
All right. So in Squid Game, you really get. It's almost made explicit that this is like a critique of capitalism when you find out that the protagonist was involved in a real life strike in South Korea that was a major event in the country. I'll put a link to a story about that. That
would
revealed...
be 456.
Okay.
Jin-ho,
So Jin-hun's he's one of the strikers, and it ruins his life. If you read I'll link to the article. If you read an article about
and
this,
that's based on a real event that really happened.
Yes, so this was a real event, and it ruined the lives of the people involved because the strike was broken. It was brutally broken. The cops came in. They literally beat a lot of the strikers to death. The ones who survived, they were forced to pay reparations to the company, like to the tune of millions of dollars, and they were also blacklisted. They couldn't work anywhere else or anywhere good, so they were going to be
like
in
something
debt.
Out of England in the 19th century, or America in the late 19th, early 20th century, with the coal miners and the truckers. That's amazing that could happen as recently as just, what did you say, 10 years ago?
I think it happened about 10, 20 years ago, yeah. And,
so around the time of the original screenplay was written back in 2009. Wow.
Yeah, and, America has a very brutal labor relations history, too. There was a famous event where strikers were machine gunned down by I think the U.S. Army.
Yep, that's I've read that.
That was about 100 years ago. Uh,
Yeah.
Now, an interesting theme of Squid Game is that you find out in the very beginning that the protagonist, Ji-hoon, he seems to be addicted to gambling. He's stealing money from his mother, and he's stealing money from his mother, and he gambles it. But his heart is in the right place, though. He's trying to raise money because his mother needs medical care. He's trying to provide for his daughter. He's estranged from his daughter. He's estranged from his wife. The thing is, though, and his mother, she needs medical care, but she can't afford it, which is which is another perversion of the system. We have a system where you have to pay to be for health care, like in South Korea too, I guess. Now, the interesting thing about the theme of gambling throughout Squid Game is you find out it's not just Ji-hoon. It seems like almost all the characters are gambling, right? So you get the character, what is it? The Sang-woo. So Sang-woo is the finance guy. He goes to a university. The best university in South Korea.
218, player 218. Yeah.
Yeah. So he goes to the best university in South Korea. He's gonna work on, I guess, the South Korean Wall Street, and he's gonna be a big finance guy. But you find out that he has also gambled a bunch of money away in the market.
It's interesting. Both Ji-hoon and Sang-woo, players 4, 5, 6, and player 218, they were both based on the director, the writer. He was the first in his family to go to college. I don't know if he had a gambling problem, but he did say that when he created those are like the two halves of his own divided psyche. So it's just interesting to add.
Ji-hoon is gambling the money away at what is it? Horse races or dog races, I think. So he's
Dog
like,
races.
huh?
I think they're dog races.
So Ji-hoon's gambling is like a lower class kind of gambling, and a lot of people would say, oh, Wall Street finance, that's not gambling, but I don't know. It's hard to really. I think it's really hard to make the case that modern finance isn't just another form of gambling, and what you see, this is a theme that you see all throughout Squid Game, especially because the players are all playing. They're all taking a gamble to win the game. It's like, there's another character that gambles, is in Gambling Dead. It's the criminal. What's his name?
Player 101.
Yeah, Deok-soo. Okay, so 101. So he's the gangster. He's in Gambling Dead too. And so everybody's gambling. In capitalism, almost all of capitalism's gambling. You make an investment and you're hoping it pays off. So you're always playing the odds in capitalism. See, this is a critique of capitalism. I'm not sure if Marx made this critique, but this definitely comes out of the idea that capitalism is a system that it's capricious. There's nothing fair about it. There's nothing like systemic about it. It's just a giant casino. And you see this, and you see this in the lives of all these characters. All these characters are at the mercy of a system that is just like a giant casino, and they just have to get lucky. And when they decide to play the Squid Game, it's just for them, it's just another gamble, because that's what the system's like. That's what the entire system's like. For instance, in episode 2,
I was going to say it's an interesting phenomenon because there's the element of free will, right? In that no one is forced to gamble. They choose to gamble.
Well, that's the defense of capitalism. That's how people defend capitalism.
That Jin Woo, player 456, it does seem to me, Randall, that he is a compulsive gambler. In that, he, I can't say to the other characters because we spend the most amount of time with him, that as the story progresses, we do see the real reasons why he needs money. But at the same time, it does look like when we've met him, he is an idler, mooching off of his mom, just frittering away his time, mooching off of a lot of people, uh, trying to get rich quick.
Yeah, in the
What do
beginning
you
he's
say to that?
yeah, in the beginning he's stealing from his mom. He's taking her money and trying to gamble it. But I mean, he seems to redeem himself as the show goes on because you see that his heart is in the right place, and he is the victim of a system where he doesn't seem to have a choice. I mean, there is no other way for this guy to make the kind of money he needs in life without risking it. And that's that's essentially the capitalist system. I mean, you get to episode 2 in Squid Game, and the players discover this. They discover one of the rules is that they can all end the game if they take a vote and everybody votes to end the game. But then if everybody votes to come back, they all have to come back. So in episode 2, they're given the choice to play or to play or stop, and they almost all, or a lot of them, decide to come back. And they decide to come
That's
back.
interesting. That I'm going to break that point up for you to take a moment because I always thought that was one of the most fascinating things, and it does go to what you're saying, right? Which is, no one is forcing them to play this game of life and death. After they play the first game and they see the consequences of it, they, as rational human beings, the majority of them, a very small majority of them, but enough to change the result, allows everyone to go back to their lives without the money. The money does go to the victim. No, I forgot how it worked. Anyway, you do see that when they're in their own worlds, for some of the characters, I don't know for our protagonist, but for some of the characters, they have so actually even for him, they're all in debt to somebody. They all face having their body parts reclaimed for organs or losing their child, or so you're right. The world without money is so hard that they all realize it's a very weird thing. But when they come back, they all realize that it's better for them to risk their lives and make, on the odd chance that they can make a super amount of money, than know that every day it's a risk just to get by with no promise of class escalation. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's like the choice is well, the choice is either to starve or to risk it all. I mean, that's the
Hobson's choice.
that's the choice in capitalism. This is what defenders of the
Die
system,
working or die starving.
right? This is what defenders of the system would say, right? They'll say that no one has to work, no one has to take a job, no one has to take a job they don't want. You can do whatever you want, but it's a false choice because the alternative is basically death. And Squid Game makes this completely transparent, completely clear. Because they literally have chosen to risk their lives in the Squid Game, and they feel like they don't have a choice. I think that's the point the show's trying to make. It's very Marxist in that respect.
In that episode that you're referencing, episode 2, Ali, we find out as being the player who is the player 199. He has been ripped off by his old boss. He resorts to violence to get the money. It's a large sum of money for him. And he gives that money to his wife and says, go back to Pakistan with our child. And I thought about it. It's like, weirdly enough, that is one of the only people who actually was able to make a difference for their family. And it's interesting to point out, Randall, that he did it by attacking his employer, his boss, violently, risking his own life. And then that's money, I guess, is to find them salvation in another land. Do you feel that that works towards your analysis?
Yeah. So so one of the things that Marx would say, I think, is that the capitalist system, it warps relations between people. So Ali's boss is taking advantage of him for no other reason, it seems, than that he wants to accumulate as much money as possible, because that's what this system is encouraging. The boss can, because Ali is powerless, because Ali is from another country, is an immigrant. Ali's boss can simply steal from him without any repercussions. The only way Ali can get his money is by breaking the law, by attacking his boss and stealing the money back from his boss. Um, you know, there's a. I know in the Soviet Union, criminals were sometimes looked at as being higher in social status than political prisoners, because political prisoners were not ideologically correct, whereas criminals were ideologically opposed to a capitalist system. So they would find ways around the rules, they'd break the rules, because criminals are faced with a system that is morally and ethically corrupt, and so they refuse to follow that system. They refuse to abide by the rules of that system. And you see this in Squid Game with the character of Deok-soo, the organized criminal. I don't know what his name, 101. So he in the Squid Game becomes well, everybody looks up to him in Squid Game. They think he's strong. They think he's going to be a winner. So like you have the seductress,
alpha.
the alpha. Well, yeah, he's physically powerful. You have the seductress character who wants to be on his team, and that's another.
212.
Mm-hmm.
Go on,
So I'll just talk about that briefly. So the seductress character. This is another thing that. This is another way that perhaps capitalism warps human relationships. In Squid Game, you don't see much romance at all, except for between the seductress and the gangster Deok-soo. So it's like capitalism has so infected human relations that it's stripped us of romance and love and the warmth between men and women, or between significant others. And the woman, the seductress, what's her name, Mi-nyeo, she is
player 212.
She is trying to seduce Deok-soo just for her own gain, because she wants to be on his team and she wants to have that advantage. And the only sex that happens is between those two. It's the only romance, if you can call it that happens, is between those two. It's because the Squid Game, the system of the Squid Game, has stripped us of any other kind of feelings of romance. It's become, sex, romance, love. It's become just another commodity in the Squid Game. Everyone has to use everything. It's like there's no room. The Squid Game makes it so there's no room for any kind of like real human feeling and warmth. And you see that the best example of that is in the marble game. So the marble game is like the ultimate Marxist analysis of capitalism. It's the most poignant, the most emotional episode. What episode is that? Let's see. That's episode 6. So at the beginning of the marble game, they ask everybody to break up into pairs. And previous to that competition, each team competed against other teams. So everyone picks like the one they're closest to in the Squid Game, the one they feel closest to. And then twist of fate, the marble game, they have to compete against each other. So you have one of the worst ones is you have a husband and wife that have to compete against each other, and they've been competing in the Squid Game together the entire time, and now one of them has to kill the other, basically. So you see in episode 6 just how a system like the Squid Game can pit people against each other who, in any other kind of system, any other kind of situation, would be best friends, would be lovers.
That was interesting, the marble game, because one of the rules of the marble game was you could not use physical force to take your opponent's marbles. You had a half hour in which to get the marbles. So those two rules were just kind of fascinating to me, because Diak-Soo, the gangster, was losing, and then he changed the rules of the game and he won. And then you had the other young girl who was from South Korea, who was paired off with a girl from North Korea, who just really wanted to have 30 minutes of a connection with another human being, and was willing to sacrifice her own life for just getting those 30 minutes.
Right. That was a great scene. That was a great moment, because she has found a way within the system to open up a space for humanity. She sees that
if she's willing to pay the ultimate price.
Yeah, she sacrifices her life, basically, so that she can have 30 minutes of true humanity.
But the gangster, Diak-Soo, player 101, he also shows you another thing, which is that you can change the rules of the game if you're losing. If you can convince the other person to play your which I would argue, if you want to say that, then even the rules that we play by are not hard and fast.
Well, I think
that the system can be gamed. The system can be gamed to the right aggressive personality.
Well, there's a couple things there. I mean, number one, a lot of people who defend a capitalist system will say, well, there's rules. There's ethics. There's you have to behave a certain way. It's fair. And in Squid Game they make the same argument. It's emphasized many times. That the Squid Game is fair. Everybody's treated fairly, and out in the real world it's not fair. But yeah. So as in the marble game, it's like you can use any kind of deception or cunning you want, except for maybe physical force. To get the marbles.
And you look at our protagonist, right, Jin-hun, who just even takes it a step further than the gangster. The gangster tricks and deceives his opponent, but Jin-hun just takes advantage of the elderly man's senility to his own ends. Straight up exploitation.
Right. Well, this notion that it's a hard thing to argue that there is fairness, that the game is fair and square, I guess you could say. I mean, you see examples of it all over our civilization, all over capitalist civilizations, where there is things aren't fair and square. Things aren't being done fairly and ethically. But does it affect the people that win? No. I mean, as long as you win, it doesn't matter.
Well, and then there's the deception, of course, of Ali, player 199, by Sang-woo, player 218, who tricks him with a bag of rock.
Well,
really, he uses his intelligence. Everyone uses different skills. I would argue each of them uses their guile, their whatever their leading skill set is. I honestly forgot how Mi-nyeo, the seductress, won. Oh no, she was the odd person out. She didn't have to play, right?
Right. I think so.
Because she was the weakest link.
Right.
So they deliberately wanted her out. Could you explain that to me then?
How it fits into a Marxist analysis?
Yeah.
I don't think it does, but
okay.
I don't know. It might, but I don't know how it does.
But maybe you're right. No, but maybe you're right. I mean, in fairness, is she just the surplus that we don't need to, that we just keep around in a society because, we need to have a weakest link?
Well, it's funny because she does seem to get a choice not to play, and
Well, because no one
and nothing
chooses to
happens
play
to
with
her.
her, she survives. So
Right.
you could argue that you're better off in this particular late stage capitalist society by being alone and going it alone, because all friendships are transactional in the capitalist society. So everything is transactional, and when people stop getting benefits from the relationship, they become competitors. Even though she was the most transactional person in the entire miniseries, strangely enough, uh, she can survive because no one wants anything from her. And she's willing to offer everything. Remember, she always says, I will offer you everything.
You know, interestingly, her character, she doesn't. She takes offense. She takes personal offense to the gangster rejecting her, and she finally gets her revenge on him in the bridge game.
Yes.
So she is interesting in that she can't abide by the rules of the capitalist system, as you're laying it out, like where everything is just transactional all the time. She, like the protagonist, maintains her humanity by killing herself to kill the gangster to get her revenge, because she is not able to take her feelings and just lock them up and forget about them.
So her humanity is her strength.
Well, you know, as it's interesting because as much as she tries to manipulate other people, and you can see it in her performance. You know, this is another aspect of Squid Game I think is really good. It's just, I think because the writing is so strong and the characters are so well done and their motivations are so clear, and this is such a clear critique of capitalism, everybody knows that. All the actors know that the performances become very strong. You know, the actors have a lot to work with. Their characters are very clear. So her character throughout, you see that she is trying to manipulate the people around her. She's trying to use sex as a weapon, as a tool to help her advance in the game. But in her performance, I feel you can see that it's affecting her emotionally. This is not how she would choose to live her life if she had a choice, if she had a real choice. And by the end, the bridge game, she's done with it all. She has given up because her humanity has been so stripped from her, you know, in the sense that she's given up every part of her humanity to try to advance in the system, in the game, that she feels like there's nothing left. And so her suicide is a relief for her. I mean, that's the sense I get from her character, and she plays it perfectly. You know, and that kind of depiction of, say, like a prostitute has been made in Marxist literature for many years. So you look at something like The Jungle. I think Marx, I don't know if Marx wrote about prostitutes. I think he may have a couple times. But there's other depictions of prostitutes in Marxist literature that are similar to that, I feel.
That makes sense, because again, her body is the way she makes her living. So in some senses, she's the ultimate version of what Marx is talking about, when your own body becomes part of the tools of production.
Yeah, I mean, what, you know, when you're selling your body, when you're selling your body, I mean, what is there left? You know, I mean, and it's not just for prostitutes, but
well, you could always argue within that critique that all of us are prostitutes, in that we're all selling our humanity for the means of production. You know.
Sure. Well, let's talk about. Well, should we talk about the workers?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the workers themselves, you know, they're under strict rules too. They have to wear masks. They can't. they can only speak when spoken to, I believe. It's like
Well, there's a hierarchy within them, which goes circles, which are workers, uh, triangles, which are soldiers, and squares, which are managers. So you really have in that dialectic, you have really the working man, the lumpen proletariat, and the managers. Let me double check. I just want to make sure that no one says we got that part wrong on the demarcations, but do want to make sure I got that right. I have it written down here. It is, hold on. Let's see. Where is it? Okay. Yes. So the guards with the circles are considered workers, triangles are soldiers, and squares are the managers. And when the inspector, Gung Ho, I'm sorry, really just want to call him the undercover detective, comes looking for his brother, he starts out at the bottom and through murder moves his way to the top of that chain of guards. It's kind of interesting that even the guards live lives not too dissimilar from the people they're guarding, because they have little cells that they're locked in. Their heads must be covered at all time. They cannot speak to each other. It's a very dehumanizing and isolating life.
exactly.
And
Well, this is what the system's doing to everyone. I mean, it's not just the workers. The guards.
Tools of the state, if we were to using a Leninist Marxist view. They are
Right. Well,
tools
the
of
guards, they are also stripped of their humanity. They can't even show their face. They can't even like chit chat with each other. And then we get up
You
to
think this is the writer director's drawing from his experience as a police inspector in South Korea, as a cop in South Korea, that being part of what it was like to be a South Korean cop was not that dissimilar to the guards with the various circles and triangles?
I think that's any job. Any job you work, you put on a mask. I think
Right,
I
but
don't
I'm
know.
saying that, hold on, but let me make my point, which is the part of guards are just, look, if you use a Leninist perspective, the role of a soldier or a guard is to help the state oppress the worker. So the people who are of the power are never going to come out and just oppress the worker. They have layers and layers of oppression, and the people they use as those tools are the police, the army. We've talked about it already. And because the guy who created the show has actually served in that capacity, I really do think it makes a point that there is a small degree of quality of life difference between those who are oppressed and those whose sole job, and this is a key point, whose sole job is to contribute to the oppression of those people. And that's what makes them so distinct, is their job is to make sure everybody stays in line. And that's not like every kind of job. Your job, you make your living by making sure no one steps out of line. And your whole job is really to keep the system physically enforced. Yours is the boot that goes on the neck.
That's true, but
And that should not be undersold, because that's a scary place to be, right? Because if those people rose up, if those people had unity, if there was class unity, then they would join the workers in a revolt. But because they're living under false consciousness, they have a loyalty to their employers who doesn't, and their employers don't really see them as anything better than slightly better lapdogs than the people whose job they are to oppress. Well, that's a big difference when you're talking about the role of the enforcers of law and order in a state. Those people really are in a unique position and are pointed, you would argue, in the wrong direction.
Sure, okay. I mean, but they themselves though are they're subject to a certain kind of oppression too.
Well,
I mean,
after all,
guards
the
are
ones who
killed.
try to make their own way selling body parts, which is very grotesque, but they're executed because that they're not allowed to have financial advancement beyond what's already been prescribed to them by their employers.
Well, I believe that they didn't. They're executed for other reasons. It's like
They were executed for selling the body parts, but they do that for their own financial advancement, you could argue. So you could argue that even when they try to advance within their own class financially, the people who employ them say, no, you can't. You cannot do more than we decide how much money you make. And it's strictly economic. Remove the morality of what they're doing for a second. And it shows that those guards don't even get to choose how they can enhance their own lives to move up.
Okay, well, another interesting character is the front man, okay, who is, we find out at the very end that he was one of the winners of the past games, and so he's plucked from obscurity and made to be the biggest guard, the ultimate guard, and he's given a lot of...
And he is the inspector's brother.
Mm-hmm. He ends up being the inspector's brother, and, you know, this is, this isn't out of Marx, but in labor history, this is how you break labor movements. You find the leaders, and you corrupt them, or you kill them. So the front man is very typical of a character. I mean, this is right out of Steinbeck. You know, he's the head of the labor movement, and he's the star worker, and he's taken out, and he's made into like the star guard. And you know, the ultimate example, I think, in Squid Game of how the system warps, capitalism warps interpersonal relationships is when the front man realizes he has to kill his own brother because otherwise the integrity of the games will be threatened. His brother is out of love. His brother is trying to find him. But, you know, because everyone working in the games has to keep their identity secret, he can't reveal his identity to his own brother unless he kills his own brother. And so the front man chooses the games. He chooses the sanctity of the system, protecting the system over his own family. And I don't know, what else do you have to say? I mean, that's the ultimate like Marxist theme come true right there, I think. Illustrated.
In an interview with the writer-director, he said that if he did make a sequel, one of the things he really wanted to explore was how the front man came to be the front man and what was his relationship to his brother, Jun-ho.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's the ultimate expression. It's the ultimate expression of the insidious nature of capitalism that he has chosen the game over his brother. He has to kill his own brother. I mean, it's sad, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, because the family, just like the husband and wife, which should be the dominant union of loyalty, and for our protagonist and for the Korean defector, it is, you know, and actually maybe even for Jun-ho's friend, the player 212, not 212, sorry, player 218, Sang-woo. You know, there is a question about, you know, who values family and who doesn't. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, and speaking of people on the top of the game, okay, you end up later on, seeing the VIPs who are watching the games and being entertained by the games. And the people on the top of a capitalist system are just as warped by the system. What?
All speak English.
Yeah, they're all rich Americans for the most part. Yeah,
they're all American. That's all I wanted to point out. You know, no need for checking subtitles there. We know who the real monsters are.
American America's the richest country in the world, and this world, this is, I guess I'm going to just say this is a fact. This world is the way it is because America made it that way. uh, just
Can I say something about the VIPs for just a second?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I found this up about the VIPs when they were dealing with the production design. They said the VIP room was one of the last pieces to be designed, and the production designer and the creator decided on an animal-based theme for both the costumes and the room, because the VIPs are the kind of people who take other people's lives for entertainment and treat them like game pieces on a chessboard. So I wanted to create a powerful and instinctive look for the room. So there's like that question of them as almost like predatory animals. And you do see a lot of chess pieces throughout, just to feed your argument.
Sure. The VIP.
There's a saying that, and it's a Russian proverb, which Marx would have been familiar with, and most of the early socialists used to quote, which is, "Man is a wolf to man."
Oh, well, yeah, that's good. Yeah. Yeah, and you can see the Adam Smith. What did he write? Noam Chomsky is frequently loves to quote Adam Smith by saying, Adam Smith wrote, it's his favorite Adam Smith quote. How's it go? The vile maxim of the rulers of mankind is more for us and none for you, something like that.
Yeah.
So but see, this is a system. The system, it encourages the people on top to lose their humanity and to accumulate. We talked about A Christmas Carol. Scrooge is like a great example of this, I think, because Scrooge, the character Scrooge, he loses his humanity and he just devotes his life to accumulating wealth. The VIPs in Squid Game, they don't seem to have any kind of empathy or regard for the people around them. So, for instance, one of the VIPs, he wants to have sexual relations with the waiter, who's the cop in disguise. And he doesn't care that the cop is, he doesn't seem to care if the cop is interested in that at all. To him, the waiter is just
there for his pleasure.
He's there for his pleasure, correct. And so are the people playing the game. I mean, they exist only to please the VIPs. And so, in a sense, the VIPs have lost their ability to relate to other people on a human level. And, because, I'm not sure if Marx wrote so much about this, but I know that other writers wrote about this, especially contemporary of Marx, about how the capitalist system warps everyone. Right? Even the people on top. So, I mean, there's a way, I think a lot of works, artistic works of recent times, they try to make a case that the people on top are there because they're the most unscrupulous, they're the most disgusting, debased people. That's how they clawed their way to the top. But you can see in Squid Game, it's like everyone in the system, even the people on the bottom, are going to do whatever it takes to get up to the top. And once they're at the top, that kind of lifestyle, that once you're at the top, you don't have to care about anybody else, and they don't. And you see Il Nam, on his deathbed.
The old man.
The old man.
001.
In the last episode, he's like he's watching
to be the host.
He's watching a homeless man die on the street, and all he wants to do is bet on it. He has no empathy anymore.
And he loses.
Yeah, he loses. Well,
Which is a weird
that's
statement because the guy's rescued by the police.
yes. Well, the last
Tool of the state.
that's like what the last glimmer of hope that Squid Game provides. Squid Game is trying to give you hope that that even inside of this oppressive system, people could still find a way to reclaim their humanity. I mean, that's
Well, I would definitely say when you get to the very end, and the North Korean's brother is rescued and placed in the care of his best friend's mom, the fish seller, and then he gives his best friend's mom a large sum of money. I don't know what it would be in Korean dollars, but a couple $1 million, and said, "Oh yeah, your son, who the FBI or the Korean police are after. He didn't embezzle. He just gave me this money. I'm paying him back now." So and then when he's about to get on the plane and see his daughter in L.A., he's like, "Nope, I'm gonna go after the bad guys now." So it's a pretty straight up, like, geared up. I wouldn't say a Hollywood ending, but they're really like, you can really see how if they did a second season, it would be a far less cynical, more revenge or justice kind of story.
well. I wonder what's going to happen. I mean, for sure. I guess they're going to do a second season because this is like such a popular show. I mean, Netflix is making a lot of money off of it. It's much cheaper to make these things in South Korea, but I feel like they're gonna have to tone down the politics of the show. I mean, this is this is like the most over the top Marxist show that's ever been made, and I think that that's the reason this is so popular. Because it's not that there's a big bunch of people out there reading Marx and they're big fans of Marx. It's that Marx nailed it.
Well, I mean,
system.
in a way, to bring it into the modern era, like right now, Congress is debating of Biden's Build Back Better bill, which was originally called the 3.5 billion infrastructure plan, and it had things. It still does tax credits, free education, things for the environment, hearing aids and dental for the elderly, allowing Medicare for people in their earlier 60s, and even among Republicans as well as Democrats and independents, these social reforms that would have been considered socialist less than 10 years ago are very popular even among most mainstream Americans. So there is a shift as our society, as late stage capitalism seems to bring us all down, Randall. People are beginning to open up to the ideas of that maybe this is not the best system, and maybe we need a new system. And I'm not saying Bernie Sanders is going to have a successful run for president again, but in less than a space of a handful of years, our attitudes towards state-sponsored healthcare, the idea that the government should give us a UBI or at least a check every so often to go out and spend, like, our relationship to society is changing. And I do think, as he said, that the message he had in 2009 lands a hell of a lot better in the world of 2021.
Yeah, well, these socialist reforms, especially in the United States, they're very popular with the people. I mean, and not only are they popular with the people, but they're investments. I mean, all these things that are in the infrastructure bill, they're things that'll boost the economy. They're things that'll improve the lives of people, that'll make people more productive, that'll make businesses more profitable. Okay, but I mean, it's a win-win, these kind of things, and they're very popular.
Yeah,
but there's only there's a small number of people at the top who are not going to benefit, or they benefit by blocking it for the political, cynical reasons, and so that's why it doesn't get done.
So we feel like, as people in our country and other parts of the world, that we are playing the Squid Game, and that only one out of 456 of us, which would actually be a pretty good odd, even in it's much worse, will get to rise up and do so only on the backs of 454 other people who were dead by the end of the story.
Well, Another interesting aspect of Squid Game, yeah, is every time somebody dies, more money goes into the pot.
Yeah.
And that's a pot that is claimed by the winner at the very end. You know, Marx first pointed this out. He first wrote about this. Well, actually, a lot of economists before Marx even wrote about this. The labor theory of values, the idea that in a business, the owner of the business is benefiting from the labor of the other people. And so for somebody to be rich in a capitalist system, other people have to be poor. So Squid Game illustrates that perfectly. For somebody to win the money, other people have to die. So, I mean, that's our system. I mean, there's solutions to our system, okay? There's solutions to making a system that's just not a giant casino. There's solutions to making a system where you don't just have a few people getting richer and richer and everybody else like losing all their money. And you tax the wealthy, you redistribute the money into infrastructure plans. Maybe you do have a UBI. I mean, rich oil producing nations, some of them have a UBI. Alaska, the state of Alaska has a UBI. They distribute money, every year. So there are some solutions that actually work that people implement. I mean, you don't have to have, like in Los Angeles right now, we have hundreds and hundreds of, maybe thousands, right, of homeless people just living on the street, people living on the street. There's resources to house these people. In fact, the city of Los Angeles has already spent millions of dollars trying to build structures for people to live in. I think they moved like a handful of people into them. I mean, for whatever reason, there's not the political will to house everyone. This is a world. I guess. I get. Huh?
I was going to ask, is there anything more you wanted to say about the Squid Game?
Well, I guess the final thing I just want to say is that the Squid Game it hits so hard because it is a perfect analogy of the financial failures of our world, and everyone can relate to it.
Everyone can relate to it. And as long as you can afford to pay $16 a month to Netflix, you can have this wonderful experience. All right. Well, thank you, Randall. That was a very enlightening analysis. I look forward to future deconstructions of popular shows from different perspectives, be it Marxist, Freudian, or what have you. Always fun to kind of look and gaze behind things. Until then, I'm Chris.
I'm Randall.
And we'll talk again soon.